Not too long ago, a far more depressed and borderline suicidal version of myself sat down and read Tokyo Ghoul for the very first time. All 14 volumes of it, back to back. It was about 1 hour per volume, which made for a pretty neat YouTube title. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I did a whole video talking about that in my Tokyo Ghoul review video. It was a rather chunky one, but I think it's a banger despite my emotional fluctuations throughout. So go and check that out in the corner card thing that's going to appear now, and have fun with that. And it's worthwhile watching because it's going to provide this video a bit more context and some form of a consistent narrative as we talk about its sequel, Tokyo Ghoul Re, which advances the plot line by a few years, I believe. I don't quite remember at the moment from what I read. And I was able to get it in this lovely deluxe edition box set. You can do something similar with the first edition of Tokyo Ghoul, I guess, but I didn't do that. I just bought them in a bundle that somebody was selling on eBay for 50 quid rather than 80 or so for the box set, which is something of a bargain, I feel. Didn't have as much luck with this one, unfortunately, because there were people who were sending bundles of them, like groups of 13 or 14, missing the last two out, or like they'd have like an odd collection, like 1579, you know, that sort of weird fucking jank, which is rather fucking frustrating. And I did the math that it was actually cheaper to buy a box set like this than buying all the manga individually. And the only people who were selling all the manga in one collected unit outside of the deluxe box set were people who were selling copies of the manga in Japanese. And whilst that's cool and all, I can't read a lick of fucking kanji, so that's going to be no fucking good use to me. But as you saw with the box, it's a pretty sturdy little thing with some gorgeous artwork taken from front covers of Tokyo Ghoul Re, which I have displaying on the screen for you now as I continue to waffle away. But like what I did with the Tokyo Ghoul review video, I think showing off the covers in the digital format is a lot more beneficial than trying to like glare the books into the light setup that we have here, which is less than ideal. It's workable, but trying to show things off in good condition is not great. But not to distract myself too much, I really like the condition of the box and its presentation and everything's been kept together inside with a bit of Velcro. Lovely Velcro noises there, and all the books are being stored like that, which I'll show a picture on screen because if I try and maneuver the box in front of the camera, they're all just going to fall out and it won't look particularly nice as I'm trying to pick up all the different boxes. And there's some artwork on the top too. I'm not quite too sure who that's supposed to be at this time. Again, image on screen. I'm going to assume it's Kaneki, who has a different name now, given by like the silver grey hair and the red eye, so maybe it's him, maybe it's somebody else, because as you may recall from my review of Tokyo Ghoul that you have seen on the channel now, I had some thoughts and opinions about where I thought the series was going to go. I hypothesized that there are going to be different agents that are going to be returning as half ghouls, like if they were dead, dying, or they had some limbs missing, there would be that weird process that would be bringing them back into the fold as half ghouls. I've got no idea what Kaneki's game is, although I would not be surprised if they fucking cloned him, because how fucking powerful the ghoul is. Like, he's an invaluable member to the investigative team. I did assume, hypothesize, whatever, that human novel writer is a ghoul and is orchestrating a lot more than she's letting on, because it was kind of revealed that she is the child of the Ao Hiroshima, who also died at the end of the fucking manga. And I would be really intrigued to see if I'm correct with that, and just to see how powerful this character is and just how far their manipulations are going, how they connect with Aogi Tree, the investigative unit, etc. and so forth. And also, if that is correct, why are they doing all of this, and why would Aogi Tree and the scientist and everything else be interested in using ghouls to fight ghouls beyond the bleeding obvious? So I'm really excited to get stuck in, and I should probably stop waffling away, grab out volume 1 of Tokyo Ghoul Read, crack open its beautiful spine, and get stuck in. Ooh boy, that's a manga. That's a pretty fine manga. And these three right here, 6, 7, and 8, I could not put them down. There was so much going on. Like, plot twist after, what the fuck after, gotcha moments after, revelation. It was just so intense, all like sandwiched in between a lot of violent ghoul on human action, ghoul on ghoul action at points too. It's very intense, and doesn't really stop to breathe at any given moment from 1 up to 8. With its story, its plot, well, it progresses kind of slightly. You expect them to go in a certain direction, and then it's all like ramps up a load from 6 to 8. And it was getting to the point when I was reading it towards like 7 and 8, thinking, okay, this feels like the big reveal moment. All of this is sort of like happening way too soon. Like, there's got to be a fucking twist here to carry on for like another 8 volumes, remembering that the last one is a bit bigger than all the others, which would also confirm and deny my major suspicions regarding how much of the CGG Ghoul Hunter Group E is in on all this ghoul stuff going on. But just to rewind a little bit, going back to number 1, what is exactly happening? Well, it's all done through the organisation's perspective, as I kind of thought it would be. And Kaneki is now working with them. And he has a different name in this, but I'm just going to call him Kaneki just to keep us all on the same playing field here, not to be too confusing. I suspected that he was going to be a clone or some lookalike or something, but no, it's actually him. It's the same one, the half ghoul, the really dangerous one, who, towards the end of the previous manga, the investigators had no idea where to put him on a power level because he was just so unpredictably strong. No, that's him. They've brought him on as an investigator, but he don't remember who or what he is. He's just had the last 20 years of his memory just wiped, essentially, using some very strong human emotion suppressors. It's never really explained how they work, but he's trained to be a ghoul hunter investigator now by Ariyama. You know, the super strong ghoul hunter who's never been defeated, who rose to the top rank at the age 22, which was at that point unheard of. I say at that point because later on in the manga, after a big operation removing out a lot of these the gourmet ghouls, which I'm phrasing as because you may recall in Tokyo Ghoul, the first collection, there's that whole arc with like the napkin sniffer who's wanting to eat Kaneki, and there's all these other ghouls there in Big Mama, who I didn't mention in my review. They managed to remove them and a bunch of others that were just around the vicinity as well. And it's within that operation that Juzo gets that promotion up a couple ranks. So I can't quite remember Juzo's rank at this point, but it's commented on that nobody has excelled as quickly outside of Ariyama before. So it's kind of hinting to me that Juzo is going to be the one that's going to be replacing Ariyama at some point, I think. Kaneki, half ghoul investigator, trained by the best, under the supervision of Mado, the woman investigator who was the daughter of the crazy old guy from the first one, who doesn't really get much of a spotlight here, despite the fact that it's mentioned that she oversees and overwatches him. But all of this is revealed very early on, as I've mentioned, and the idea is that the entire investigation, or at least those in the know properly, well, they all know, they all recognise him, but he's being kept under strict supervision. That if he ever loses himself to the ghoul aspect of him, they'll just hunt him down. And it's very interesting how that's all played out, like a not quite Dr. Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing. That he's hearing these voices in his head and seeing this persona, which is Kaneki when he was at his most feral, for lack of a better phrase. And there are a couple of moments where that feralness takes over and he's trying to help him remember who and what he was, and then he sports his full power through his Kagane, and there's, in addition to whatever little Kagane sword things, I forget their weapon names already, that they throw so much at you, different new characters, factions, etc. and so forth, that those couple of volumes are very confusing. In fact, there's actually quite a lot of this that is fairly confusing, where you're getting constant flashbacks from characters who get mentioned once or twice, ghoul characters you've probably forgotten about, and this is also coming from the perspective that all these names are of course in Japanese, and I'm trying to remember all these like foreign names and these characters, and a lot of them do look fairly similar to each other. Some of them don't get mentioned a lot because it's mainly from the investigator side point, and even from the investigator side point, like there's just a lot of people to keep track on, and I just kept getting people confused with each other, and I actually got two key ghoul characters towards the end confused with each other, and I was just thinking, how the fuck are they occupying two different spaces at the same time? And then I realised who one of them was. Like, oh shit, this is actually a pretty significant moment. And anyway, but get back to Kaneki, it's really interesting how it's been chose to deal with that, rather than being like, he has to take this medication, or otherwise these things come back to him. No, it's just like an overriding thing that's just waiting to break free, and just like, stir up shit, as it were. And this obviously scares his crew. Now, his crew, I think, is a very interesting, almost hypocritical thing. Because remember the part where we're dealing with like half human, half ghoul scenarios. You've got somebody who's acting engineering and a big threat to society. We need to take him out an Aogi tree and try and work out what the fuck is going on. And the owl, remember, the owl was returned and like eating other ghouls. And I was right, it was the author ghoul woman who actually has orchestrated everything from the behind the scenes. And I'm sure that she is orchestrated a lot more than the novels are letting on, because spoilers, she's dead now, maybe, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. But we're having that realised, that made me feel so good, because I feel so intelligent just for a little moment. So you got all these different things going on. The half ghoul, half human thing, they're trying to stomp them out, but the organisation has decided to do something similar of their own, using a similar technology process of making like their Kagane weapons. They come up, the Quinks, that's it, they share the same name as the weapons, the Quinkheads or whatever they're called, who are these half-human ghoul hunters, and it explains in the manga how they go about doing it and wrapping it around the bloodstream or whatever, or heart or something like that. I don't really remember, and it's not really that important, other than the fact that the investigators have got like a group of 5 human ghoul hybrids now of their own, who all have their own agendas and personalities. Some of them don't have a lot of development for one reason or another, or the author's just been very slow developing all of them. Because there's one character who dies in the middle point, whose name I've forgotten, who's often referred to as Shazan or Shizuru or something like that, who's illustrated like this short, messy hair and like these jaggedy teeth, which isn't to do with him being a ghoul or anything, that's just how he was illustrated, just to make him stand out a bit more, I think. Who's a bit of a wild cannon sort of thing, not quite sure of himself, trying to find his place in the world, who for the beginning part, he's the second in command underneath this guy called Yuri, who's purely in it for the power, who's purely in it to be the best and getting the reputation, all the rest of it, to the point that none of this group's actually working well together at all. Yuri's just going off doing his own thing, and it's just believing everything that Yuri says. That quickly goes down the shitter, which I'm really glad, because that was going to be a really fucking frustrating narrative if that was going to be kept up for more than a volume or two. And also to think about how stupid that would be in a situation like the Investigators, where everyone needs to be fucking working together. Which does bring on a little interesting little side point that's only touched upon a couple of times so far, that it's kind of hinted at a little bit in the original run, but it's here, it comes in the spotlight a lot more, just how self-serving every single investigator wants to be, like to be the best, to get the most money, to get the claim for the glory, you know, for this, that, and the other. That it's really fucking petty that they're not protecting the people because it's the right thing to do. They're just doing it so they're getting the fucking buzz. Even with the empathy that we got from the previous mangas, just how they all signed up because they had lost someone to ghouls, they wanted to take revenge or something like that. That level of humanity has been stripped from the investigators, I feel. And even with some of the other investigators we stick around with, all bar the ghoul ones, for the most part, the half ghoul ones, I should say, you don't really see that humanity with them. They're all varying levels of callous. There's this new guy who just loathes Kaneki because, rightly so, he's very suspicious of him. He just talks down to everybody because he's like part of this like prestigious family who has spent decades hunting, well, centuries rather, hunting ghouls, and yet he's the only member of his family left, or one of the few that's left. Going back to the ghoul, half ghoul investigators, you have this female character who for the opening bits just spends a lot of her time in bed, just sleeping things off like a teenager. And I thought they were going to do something interesting with her, that maybe she's doing it because she's traumatized or something. Although there is a level of that that's clearly there, because she's only there for the money, not for her own self, but to help her own family out. But she's not doing anything about it, but she's still getting the credit and all the rest of it, which is varying levels of frustrating for Yuri, for example. But they don't really develop that, or at least they haven't done yet. And so we don't know why she was the way that she was, but she quickly snaps out of it because Shazan is able to get to snap out of it, brings her to meetings, drags her out of bed. You've then got one of the more interesting characters in all this called Toro, who I think is like the inverse of Kaneki. He wears an eye patch. He's a trans character. And his transness is a vital part of the story. He is a trans man. He underwent an operation when he was having the operation to become a half ghoul, because he was born a girl. He was a chest binder. The part of this storyline is they're hunting this ghoul called the Torso, who is like attacking and killing women. You can probably see where this is going now. And Torso can smell the woman on him. That even though he's gone through the transition, the ghouls are able to pick up those fine minutiae. And Torso is completely obsessed with Toro, to the point where much later on, I think it's in 8 or might even be 7, there's this big old raid on this island where the investigators believe the Orogi tree are hiding out, which it turns out they are, of course. It's not revealed how they know that they're there, but they reveal that they're there. Toro is on this assault, which at this point, when I'm about to describe happens, is on day 6. And just before that, during that aforementioned operation where so many different people get a promotion, Toro doesn't really want to kill people. Toro doesn't really want to harm people, can't really control his powers properly. Not in the sense that they're going wild, but the fact that he can't muster up the strength to do that. And it's revealed with his kidnapping from Torso, who marries him and then basically rapes him. It's never stated, but it's very clear that Toro is being raped constantly and abused. And we find out that Toro, in between being raped and this operation and the previous one, is able to control himself a bit more, not lean like anyone control or abuse him and be at the whims of any other man. It's revealed that in actual fact that his father was very abusive towards him because he identified as a boy when he was in fact a girl, and I'm doing that very loosely, from the father's perspective. That's not what I think, of course. And it's inferred that the father molested the kid as well, because kid Toro is like begging the father, is like, please, I'll do anything, you're the best dad, don't do anything, well, you're just to please me then, sort of thing. And there's a bit of dialogue where he says, maybe this is just my fate, just to be abused by men, which is so fucking harrowing to read. And I'm not quite too sure which one of the two is alive, because Yuri, with their sense of smell, is able to pick up the scent of Toro, and we see like a dismembered body, which is what the thing that the Torso has done. And it's revealed with some writing that it was molested, things removed, orifices had certain things shoved into them, a tongue was removed, I want to say. It's a lot more graphic than that, but very like in a blunt medical sort of fashion. I don't think I could read verbatim, and I'm not going to put up on screen, just because I think YouTube would just not like that very much. And I'm unsure whether it was Torso that did this to Toro or vice versa, purely because it's revealed that Toro actually killed their parents, but didn't just kill their parents, but did so in a very over-the-top, bloody, calloused way, and they enjoyed it. But then, realising what they had done, they sort of like suppressed the trauma of what they did, and they, over the years, presumed it was a ghoul. So I don't know at this point whether it was Toro snapping and letting that part of them come back to the surface, which is part of the reason why I think they're kind of like a reverse Kaneki, beyond the fact they got short black hair and they wear an eye patch, or whether this is something that Torso did to Toro. I don't know at this point, but either way, they're just as horrifying as the other, honestly, and it's a very interesting bit of writing. I could be just really fucking stupid and have just completely missed that very clear bit of writing. And even with the bit of writing that's supposed to show a bit of empathy towards Torso, who was just kept in the woods all of their life with their father, who then just abandoned them because he put the father in danger by bringing a woman back or whatever, it didn't work too well, honestly, because we had seen the fucking horrible shit that Torso done prior to that. The cycle of abuse didn't break with Torso, but because of how Torso's been presented, it didn't really get exactly the same reaction for me. Like, you would see like similar atrocities, or different atrocities I should say, because no one's quite depraved as Torso in this, do horrible things, but you feel for the different investigators in one way or the other. I mean, you can check out my previous review, just how drained it made me feel, in a good way, just because of how effective the writing was. It doesn't quite have the same effect here. I was also correct assuming that some of the investigators who were injured would come back as a ghoul in one way or another. I mentioned Jazot earlier on was able to get their revenge on the ghoul that raised them in a wonderful display of violence. And you may be wondering how they managed to do that, because I mentioned that they lost their leg. Well, the investigation team restored their leg via prosthetic, which is where they keep all their quinqué knives in now, which I think is a really fucking cool idea. And it's also very fitting for Juzo to have something so quirky as well. And Juzo has clearly grown up quite a bit in these few years. Still a little kooky here and there, like when they meet Kaneki earlier on, Kaneki is being like proper ghoul investigator. They greet each other, and the first thing that Juzo does is like go into Kaneki's pocket and pull out some snacks and treats, just as a bit of a routine that they have. And there's a really nice little detail earlier on that Kaneki was unsure why, but the first time that they met, Juzo gave them some money, which is referencing when they first met in the first round of the manga, that Juzo took some money from Kaneki just because they could. And I just think that was a nice little attention to detail. Juzo's drawn a little differently here. They seem to have like a darker hair colour now, at least from what I could gather from how they're illustrated. And Kaneki's hair is also white to begin with. And gradually, as the manga goes on, it becomes more black, which resembles to me two things, like the blending of the more human and the ghoul nature, the trauma of the investigator, human and ghoul hybrid sort of thing, and I'm mashing them all together because as Kaneki's like gaining their memories, their hair's becoming more black. And they're remembering bits about how they joined the investigator team, like going through their memories of like having their name chosen for them. There's a bit towards the end where they look into that old prison cell and they remember being locked up. They had their eyes removed, of course. You remember the fight with Ariyama. Of course, they grew back. So he was taken there, kidnapped, given books to read, and etc. and so forth. But Kaneki comes back properly a little beforehand during this operation to remove the Rosewood family of ghouls, who are associated with the main ghoul who wanted to eat Kaneki because he had this great aroma, scent, taste, all the rest of it. Despite the fact that the manga describes him as American, he's now suddenly German. I'm not quite too sure the consistency with that, but they find him, he restores his strength because he got really weak because Kaneki disappeared. There's a whole really interesting emotional narrative that happens with that. There's this ghoul servant who gets kidnapped by the owl, you know, the author ghoul, who I'm just going to refer to as the owl so we all know who I'm talking about now. And she tortures him in a similar way that Jason tortured Kaneki. I'm not quite too sure what the purpose was beyond it's all part of a big scheme. Torturing this ghoul to feel that they don't have to be loved, to do what they needed to do for themselves rather than doing it for somebody else's whims. Doesn't quite pan out like that, unfortunately, but there's a really chilling illustration that goes with that. And again, I'm not entirely too certain if I can put that up on the screen, because unlike the Kaneki ripping his face off for the previous manga, where that's very clearly over-the-top cartoon stuff, this one image I had no idea even existed, and it's sort of borderline some self-harm with like having things stitched onto his face. Well, his eyes and mouth are stitched shut, sort of, and I don't really want to delve too much and like putting that much on screen. And also, he's assuming under a boy's name when the manga then describes him later on as a girl. So there's a fair amount of trans representation here and gender swapping and everybody just being fairly chill with it unless the times when they're not for one reason or another, which I think is pretty neat. You know, just how novel it is to be praising something like this in this day and age where having any level of trans rep is bad, it's woke fucking nonsense, it's fucking grow up, man. Like, I think it's really cool, and I think even some of the more traumatic, horrible like stuff with Toro is handled really respectfully, that it doesn't seem to feel cheap or tacky. It's done with care, which makes me think that the author themselves might have some experience with some of these things, or it's got someone or some people in their life they could refer to for sources of inspiration, in one way or another, for research, or just, you know, they've interacted with sad people and they have a bit of like secondhand knowledge sort of stuff, which I think it's really neat that they've done their due diligence. But I did distract myself a little bit there as I was talking about investigators that come back as ghoul or one other form or another. One investigator who died, the investigator who I talked about in my review, who was scared of fucking dying, he becomes a ghoul under the same process that Kaneki was made into one. So he's basically as strong as Kaneki, but he died very quickly into becoming a fucking monster. And annoyingly, he's referred to as the owl, which is different from the one-eyed owl I don't know what is this manga's obsession with owls and also ghouls torturing other ghouls, but I suppose it's just culture, I guess. But I do also like it, the fact that they do live by their own rules and they do perform some really fucking heinous shit because they're not abiding by human rules. And I'm glad that despite being a shonen manga, which is usually typically advertised towards teenagers and young adults, it doesn't really shy away from the horror without coming across as over the top and tacky. Even though throughout the years people have described Tokyo Ghoul as being like this edgy, try-hard sort of thing, I personally feel that it's all done pretty tastefully, and at times the action is depicted in a really quick, fast, like epic sort of manner, as per the original manga, where fight scenes that would usually last some minutes in an anime like last only a couple pages here to give you the sense of the scale of power, but also the speed in which things are happening as well. We also find out a bit about the cafe ghouls, Tuka, Yomo. Obviously the old guy got eaten in the previous manga. They're not in the same cafe, it's in a cafe called Ri. Coincidentally the same Ri as the manga's namesake, and Kaneki goes there a couple times, but he's kind of recognises people, but he doesn't. Harmony isn't there, who's like the daughter ghoul of the two ghouls, who has this like very good like sense awareness ability. She gets taken up by the erogi tree, which is unfortunate. It's not really explained just how that happens properly, but she's like not wanting to be coddled like a child or whatever, and if that just ended up being the best way for her, like maybe she got groomed in that position, I don't quite remember. She gets kidnapped by the investigators at one point. It's all like in the middle point of the manga during the like napkin sniffer operation. There's a proper word for it, but I can't quite remember what it is. It's also at this point where it's revealed that the one-eyed owl returns. It's also here where Kaneki becomes Kaneki again, really, or at least it's the prologue to that. Because Kaneki has fully black hair at this point, still an investigator and still using his cool powers. So it's like, okay, so the two sides have come together now, but now he's a cold, callous son of a gun because he's a lot more cold, a lot more violent. He has this eerie smile that people comment on, and I was expecting it leading up to him like a weird villain arc. That's how he'd be going toe-to-toe with Arima. He's dressing like him as well, but all in black rather than all in white. But then a few issues later, or like he's might even be like a couple later, turns out at this point is also when he gets all his memories back and he lets go of Himona and as well as every other fucking ghoul in Cochlea, this big old prison cell, all the dangerous ghouls that were being kept. We also find out in between all of this, because as I said, a lot is happening in these latter manga, to the point where I actually just stopped fucking and making notes here that I keep referring to. It's revealed that that Kung Fu ghoul from the previous one was the father figure of Rise. And it's interesting how he goes. He gets killed off by Arima, puts up a good fight. Of course, Arima being fucking Arima, just like demolishes everybody that's in his fucking path. Erogi Tree, or at least Toka's brother, and Banjo makes a return. He's now with Erogi Tree, sort of, wanting to rescue all these different ghouls. And they find out that Kaneki has, you know, returned back to the path of ghoul. They all sort of get away. It's the biggest reveal of them all, where I'm beginning to think, okay, this is kind of like the final epic boss fight sort of thing, so why are we ending it here? Kaneki goes through several transformations in this fight, trying to discover himself, what he wants out of life. He works out the character, that's who he is. It doesn't really land on any like true conclusion, and I word it as such because usually in fights like this, like the character discovers himself, they find all the strength on the reserve to take out the big bad sort of thing. And he doesn't do that. He still has these weaknesses that Arima completely capitalizes on. And I do like the consistency of that. That it's fitting with Kaneki, like going through these different phases, the haircut of the trauma, not really coming to terms with everything, not really tackling anything, constantly running away, hiding through one reason or another. How he, as I kind of mentioned a moment ago, he's at like the flip side of Arima, from like the appearance, the abilities and whatnot. And he's fighting Arima, and he's like, I've never lost to anybody before. You have an opportunity to kill me. Do you take it? He says no. And it made you to think that, oh, okay, Arima is going to fucking kill Kaneki here, and then the rest of the plot's going to go on without him. No, Arima kills himself. He takes his broken Quinque, slits his throat. But I kept looking at that page and the one after that back again. Like, why did he fucking kill himself? That makes no fucking sense. What the fuck is going on? Before I describe that, I will mention that all in between all of this, the one-eyed owl is dead properly now, And the other important ghoul who I kept confusing with her was the remaining twin, you know, because one was black, one was white, and she successfully merged with her sister and then becomes sort of like that, which is why the appearance looked a bit similar and the design was a little similar as well. That fight happens and a bunch of other people kill with her. The ghoul king, the one-eyed ghoul, I should say, to use the proper things, is dead, gone, Vamoosh. But it's revealed that Aramama, one of the head honchos, and Risei were created by CCG, who are operated by ghouls, to be half human, half ghouls. Which is kind of what I was expecting, because remember I had envisioned that the investigators were in on it, or Aramama was in on it, which is why he knew about Kaneki. It's not revealed how he knows about Kaneki, because he's dead now. But that's what we've got now. And now Kaneki has got his Aramama's lot, who was given this instruction to protect him and to do what he wants to do, sort of thing, you know, to wipe out a rogue tree and reveal the truth or whatever, as Kaneki's got all of his memories back, and like has essentially usurped Aramama's position as the best hunter out of the lot. And I say usurp deliberately, because at the end of the book where you're looking through like the different profiles, and also the beginning of Volume 9, Aramama is referred to as the one-eyed king. But so is the one-eyed owl is referred to as the king. Because she gets captured. I'm sorry that I'm jumping all over the place with this, but I'm rather excited by the plot. I've only done notes, and a lot of these things all happen all at once. She gets captured because the investigators for Kaneki work out what's going on. She does this talk, you know, to advertise her book, which is literally called One-Eyed King, but in like German or something like that, or some other fucking language, meant to create ghoul sympathizers and to encourage ghouls to come up with an uprising sort of thing. They arrest her, and she gives this little thing, and she reveals to a rogue tree and the others that she is the One-Eyed King, but so is Aramama. Half ghoul, half ghoul. Kaneki's a half ghoul. He's taken out them both. He has now become the One-Eyed King. And it's revealed at the very end at number 8 that Ri means king, i.e. Tokyo Ghoul king. Or the king of Tokyo Ghoul, however you would want to word that sort of thing. So now you've got Kaneki with a bunch of half-human ghouls who were trained under Aramama and are thus some of the best fucking fighters in Japan. You've got remnants of Aogi Trio, i.e. Toka's brother, the cafe lot, all going up against the investigators, Aogi Tree, the organisation, the mysterious one that's the old man ghoul, the owl. There's so many different names and things, all very fucking confusing. They're the ones that are calling the shots, but they have been killed now. But there's obviously some grander conspiracy under the works, of course, as we've got 8 fucking more volumes to get through. Yeah, it's a lot of really confusing shit. And again, I can only apologise for how all over the place and how rambly all of this is. And you're probably just as confused as I was when I was reading it. But I'm only relying on some notes here, and I don't want to write too much down, and I have to remember a script, essentially. But I also wanted to do it like this because I wanted to come and deliver just how hectic things are and all the different plot seeds and twists and gotcha moments that happen. It's a real fucking clusterfuck of excitement, tragedy, abuse. Like, the whole cycle of abuse thing is just so fucking prevalent in this series, and this is only halfway through. Like, this could have been a great place just to wrap things up and just like leave it open in the air sort of thing, but no, we've got another fucking 8 more volumes to go, and I don't have a fucking clue what's going to happen. I can't even fucking guess what's going to happen now. It's all just fucking bonkers. So I'm recording this particular segment on the 3rd of February 2026 in the year of our Lord Telos. it is a Tuesday, which means a weekend has just gone and passed. And my intention was to read the first group of 4 on the Saturday and the second group of 4 on the Sunday, because I had a lot going on, divvy up the reading time, etc. and so forth. But no, it didn't exactly happen like that, because I was so engaged and engrossed with everything that I was reading. I read all 8 of them on the Saturday. Because, as I said, I was just really engrossed with it, and it was just so high action, so many stakes at risk, and there was plot twist after revelation, and moments where I was literally gasping to myself and just felt surprised and shocked and awe with what I was seeing and reading. And there's a couple moments towards the end where the fiction is presented in such a way that I was just surprised, and it really just amplified the horror of this series. And I'm just turning back and sort of, I missed something, like there's some pages missing. It's like, no, this is how we're really going to be presenting this information. And I'll get to those specific bits when I get to them, but from the fucking get-go, like from volume 9 onwards, it's just so fucking chaotic. And like, I didn't mention it on the previous segment, but the guy on the front cover here looks like my boy Amon. And I said, nah, it can't be him. It's probably going to be somebody else, like a new player or whatever, because, you know, he died in Tokyo Ghoul. Like, we have confirmed that he is dead. Like, we see him die. But no, he is captured by Irogitri and is turned into a half ghoul, and Kano, the scientist dude, like, sees great potential in him, but because Amon is just so fucking strong, like, his RC levels or whatever just fucking explode, and he becomes uncontrollable, and like he's considered a failure, partly because of his own breakable will, but also because of how rapidly he spirals out of control. And he appears on this fire, and I'm looking, no, that ain't Amon. No, but it's Amon. He turns up, and of course he loses control because he's catching a ghoul, because he's just been hunting and eating other ghouls. Like, he's not going to kill people. So he just quickly spirals out of control and becomes a fucking monster, and there's this big old fucking free-for-all with all these different hunters wanting to take him out. And like, the main bulk of like the Quinky sounds like fucking Tinky Winky, sorry, like the half ghoul squad, like trying to take him on. That looks like this special investigator Amon, and it's confirmed to be Amon, and it's just such a cool moment and revelation. And that's not even how it starts, because you've got the leader of Irogitri who's there, who again has got all these different like Kaneko like ghoul bits coming off him. He's got this really cool armor sort of thing. The owl turns up and betrays Irogitri because he's been plotting this whole revenge thing for ages, because he just wanted to be an investigator, and just like every fucking ghoul who's captured and tortured this, his fucking psyche breaks, and he kills the leader of Irogitri. And he is hoping to be accepted back into this, you know, because he's done a good thing. He's clearly level-headed. But no, the investigators in charge there still see him as a fucking threat, because of all the people he's killed, all the like damage that he's done, and how he's a dangerous ghoul. And it's sort of at this point when Amon turns up, and Irogitri is sort of like, and the owl is sort of like protecting him. But it gets a step further than that, because Mado, like the woman investigator, the son of the crazy one, she protects the owl at one point from dying, because it's talked upon a little bit in the first series, like how these two are friends, are like rivals, are gone with each other, and she protects him. She betrays the CCG to spare his life, and she gets injured and then taken away by other ghouls, but I'll talk about that in a moment. But wow, like, it's nice that they remembered that plot point, and that there's these weird feelings between the two characters. And it's so interesting to me that of all the people that spares him, that the way that he survives is because of her. It's also a bit sad, really, that they don't really do much with her, given how important and prominent that she was in the original run of Tokyo Ghoul, that she sort of steps up a bit, but then takes a bit of a back burner sort of thing, which you could argue might be a representation of, like, the women to man ratio in working environments. But I'm really picking at straws here to try and work out why she wasn't as important. Maybe dealing with all the grief and the trauma of losing a mom, which of course she is able to see again, and we do see later on that they do connect in this really nice, heartfelt, messy, emotional confrontation where she's recovering in this sort of like medical ward bay that these schools have set up, and there's this whole mission trying to retrieve like this cure to stop her from becoming a ghoul. I don't exactly know what's going on, but they're talking about her RC levels or whatever, so I don't know if she's like a ghoul or half ghoul at this point. But something's clearly amiss, and like she walks off, and Amon goes with her. Eventually, at the very end of it, and it's implied that they have their little kiss that we were teased in Tokyo Ghoul, because their working relationship and whatnot. But we don't see them kiss, and it's like one of them says, "Oh, don't turn away this time," but we don't actually see them kiss. So fuck you for taking that away from us. But that's a real fucking classy way, and just leaving it up in the air to see whether they actually hook up or not. And in the epilogue, which is all very soppy and perhaps a little ham-fisted, but I'll talk about that later, it is very much implied that they do, walk away, because there's a bit of saying that some ghouls, are still violent, but some are not, and it shows like the silhouettes of these two, it's clearly those two, walking off together, and I'm just glad that they get there happily ever after together, and Amon also is able to wrap up some of his grievances because he talks to Kaneki later on, and it also helps out with removing the main big threat of ghouls, the clowns, which is made up of that priest guy who was like the father figure of Amon, and also we find out that he raised the crow as well, which adds another layer of fuckery in there as well, because there's a bit of a conflict between those two at one point, but the priest dude is just too fucking strong for most of the ghouls and the investigators to be dealing with. But Amon is the one who is able to take him out, and it's really sad because, he struggled to get rid of him previously and just kept him alive and just using him for information because of everything that went past. He still loved him, which might not make a lot of sense to people because of the things that he did to all these kids and just the nasty piece of shit that he is. But relationships and emotions are messy, and they're human, and it often doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, just to dump you with some personal trauma of mine, my dad nearly killed my family and I when I was 6. I was like 2 months into being 6 years old, and he was an alcoholic and he was a drug user. Sort of chased us out of this house, out of this incident, and he manipulated and gaslit me and my brother into seeing him a lot. It's difficult to talk about sometimes, but I don't have a problem talking about it. And I didn't really see him for most of my life, and he just sort of moved on and did his own fucking thing, and he sort of went on this downward spiral because he had 2 kids that were disabled. And I'm not blaming myself, I'm putting the blame on him because he just fucking wasn't man enough to take on the responsibility of doing parent, like to be a decent fucking dad. Like, the only good memory I have of him was him taking me to a local playground and pushing me on a swing, and then I would, in a slapstick way, kick him over and he'd be over the top with it. Like, that's a real fucking sad thing indeed, that's the only good memory I have. And in a weird fucking scenario, like a couple of years ago, because my dad was a bass player and he had a couple of these bands, some video compilation that a mate of his put up just appeared on YouTube one day, and it's just really angered me just how he went on with his life and just he went on with his life without his 2 fucking kids, just didn't give a shit anymore. But despite that, there is still a part of me that loves him, even after all of that, even though that he's dead still. I occasionally visit his grave and just pay respects and just vent about things that are going on. Kind of very film-like, I know, but as I said, it's illogical, yes, but emotions they don't make a lot of sense. So with that particular instance in Tokyo Ghoul Re, and just the ghoul, being told that Amon loves him, it's just caused him to laugh himself to death. I mean, he's critically injured because he's just not strong enough for Amon anymore. Like, Amon, tackles his trauma and kills his trauma. It doesn't quite get, and he's laughing about it. So I was able to resonate with that with quite a bit. That was a very strong, impactful moment to me. There's a few moments like this where characters are literally tackling their traumas head on. I mean, it ends with Kaneki killing Rise, or a version of her, because it gets very fucking wild towards the end how the plot develops. And he has another one of these flashbacks because he dies or nearly dies again. and there's some weird fucking embryo thing growing on. I'm not quite too sure what the main antagonist is wanting to achieve by this, but anyway, like he finds a version of her and he kills her, which again, very impactful that you have to. The whole ethos of this manga is that in order to have change and to make things better in the world, you have to tackle it head on, and it's messy. And in the case of equality and equity that you find with Tokyo Ghoul, there is going to be violence, there is going to be conflict, and peace can only come from violence. You think of any fucking tragedy and colossal fuck up of the human race, very little of it has come from peace all the way through. Peace has come from violence, the calm after the storm, because it seems to be the only way that mankind can listen to each other. And so there are many instances of characters confronting their trauma in these really violent and emotional ways, and it's really beautiful. Like, that's sort of like, I guess, to summarise my thoughts on this, but there is just a lot more that happens with this that I want to talk about even more. So it's with the next volume, volume 10, and I'm not going to break each of these points up like this unless there's something specific that happens in them, such as with this one, where there's a time jump of a few months. Erogi Tree is effectively no more. Most of its members are either dead, and what remains goes into hiding for a little bit, which I'll talk about in just a moment, but it's the CCG that we, again, focus most of the manga on. Well, it sort of splits up a bit more between Ghoul and CCG at this point, but the CCG is now crumbling because its leadership is gone, because, from what I mentioned in the previous segment, the leaders were assassinated, although it turns out that one of them had survived, even though he was shot in their head. So I'm guessing he got better from that, because the main honchos of the group are ghouls, so I'm guessing he recovered from that. It's not really explained how he survives this, and when it is revealed that he survives in like issue 13, I've made some notes here, that was like one of those big fucking shock moments, because a lot of the leadership sort of causes the group to downward spiral at this point, because it's a cousin of the group that takes over, and we see bits of him. He's a ghoul, is a bit camp and flamboyant. There's some little slapstick moments I think I referred to in the previous segment that just sort of lessened the tone for me a little bit. But he takes over this great tactician and allies sort of things, works out what the clowns are going to be doing, and he's the one that's actually controlling the clowns at this point. He's also controlling like this secret group of ghoul investigators that we see a little bit in Tokyo Ghoul, these guys in coats and top hats essentially, and then mention a little bit some of the earlier Tokyo Ghoul stuff, who are described to be like the best of the CCG, who are only brought in at a sheer crisis, which they're brought in this case just to eliminate all ghouls. And there's bits that happen in the manga where 90% of ghouls in Tokyo are destroyed, which is frightening to think about. There's like a full-on genocide that then occurs. I mean, there's a genocide that happens all the way through the Tokyo Ghoul, but it feels far more active and destructive, and it gets a lot more fucked up because the CCG, like, it gets a lot more fucked up because he then brings in Kano, the scientist dude, to help them with the research of ghouls. But the way that happened is that he brings on kids to become half ghouls, and they're described to be a lot better because they've got a greater sense of smell, greater senses or whatever, and it's through these kid ghouls that are basically obliterating all these other ghouls alongside the hunters and like the main troop of ghoul investigators. And I forgot to mention it's Turo who survives, and is the one that does all those really rancid things to Torso. And because this is Tokyo Ghoul and he's been tortured, he now has white hair and his psyche completely fucking snaps, which I have very strong mixed feelings on, because the way that his plot develops now is that he is madly in love with Kaneki, but he feels that makes him a woman, because wanting to accept that he's gay, and because that's what we've talked about, he was born a woman, now a man. But his whole arc is centered around him coming to terms with what he is and feeling that nobody is really accepting him who as he is, and because he now feels this way to Kaneki, he must be a woman, and he just fucking hates that about himself, and he hates that he's feeling that everybody's seeing him as a woman and thus less than. And he portrays the CCG in a sense that there's a bit that happens towards the end with the whole fucking Kaneki embryo scenario, where he then throws this whole thing into disarray, and he's fighting the rest of the organization, well, fighting the rest of the half ghoul hunters, and they have to fight back at him and like to put him back in his place. But they also make him realize that he's family, and they see him for who he is as a person. They don't mention anything about his gender. Toro doesn't really mention his gender, but from things that we see happen in the manga, it's very fucking clear that he's referring to stuff to do with his biological makeup, as it were. And so they help him make him seen that way, and it's a really beautiful bit of writing. You know, just accepting people who and what they are, how they want to be referred to themselves, not putting their gender or their lack of gender necessarily at the forefront. You know, I mean, obviously in this case it's really important because Toro was born a woman, they're now a man, but they don't make any mention of their gender. They just accept Toro for who and what he is. They see him as family. And I think that's just a really great bit of writing, but I feel mixed about this purely because it sort of borderlines like the sort of like Japanese tropey, like yandere sort of possessive nature over Kaneki, goes completely nutty over him, and just it's becomes like the worst of the like the ghoul hunters. And I think they could have been expressed a little better for my personal tastes, but overall the way that Toro was redeemed, as it were, just brought back into the fold a little bit, that is really nice. There's a bit earlier on where the group of hunters also have to go and fight Yuri, who is the half ghoul who was only in it for himself. He goes through these tremendous arcs, just not so much thinking about himself, that he is thinking about the rest of his group and the rest of the operation while the rest of it, because he technically is now a full-on ghoul, because he keeps going back to the scientist, not Kano, like to have more of like this ghoul stuff put in, so he's like the best that he can be to hunt down ghouls to avenge his father, etc. and so forth. But it now gets to a point where he's actually a full-on ghoul, because he can't eat meat anymore, his RC levels are really high up, and he sort of loses himself. And the sleepy half-ghoul woman, who again becomes her own, who also turns out to be really fucking strong herself, it's described like a lack of control and a lack of her full-on freedom or whatever. It allows her to be like that much stronger because she's able to manipulate her Kaneki into like fist and stuff and pummel him. She is the one that brings him back, and it's implied that these two have a bit of a relationship, have feelings for each other, which doesn't really fully get capitalized on, which is fair enough. Like, I like it that these two have a closer bond, and like not everybody ties the knot, as it were, but there is actually have a little funny resolution towards the end, like able to bring him back. That, wow, you did it, and she just sort of shrugs it off because she sort of embraces him, like Kaneki holding him like face first, like embracing this monster face on, and then before we get to the suppressor rather, I believe that's how they deal with him. It's like, oh, it's nothing. Sometimes guys just need to have a big pair of titties shoved in their face. It just made me laugh because as an admirer of titties, I agree. But it's just nice just how casual it is, just low key, just, you know, just another day at the office. It's just nice. But going back to like the whole thing with the half kid ghouls, like that's real fucking creepy. It's messed up. And you could argue that there's like some sort of allegory in there where grooming kids through fascism means like shaping them into your image, like basically what people are attempting to do now with certain events that are going on and things that have happened in the past, and just that's basically how fucking cults and fascism works, indoctrination and the rest of it, and just the brainwashing of them. It made me feel uncomfortable, and it rubbed me the wrong way, but in the right way, I guess, because it's very politically poignant. And Tokyo Ghoul, I didn't realise how recent it is, because the last issue came out in 2020, which is like 6 years ago as of the recording of this, and we began to see some of those sort of things appear in 2015, 2016, because it's sort of when Trump was getting into power, and I'm fairly certain there were things happening in Japan at that point as well, but I'm not going to make any comment about that because I'm not entirely too sure about that. But with things across the pond, as we say here in the UK, it's easy to see why some of those fiends might have just slinked their way in there. Although it could have just easily been, okay, what could I introduce here to really creep things out and just add to the horror and just bring something new into the fold? Oh, let's have half-ghoul kids. Which a lot of the investigators don't seem to comment on. They just sort of silently fall into line. There is like a revolt later on, which is Yuri and one of the other investigators, his mentor figure, go and challenge the new leader, whose name I've completely forgotten, about this, and they see that he's got some ghouls in there, some of the clown, like the clown leaders as it were. They're not able to defeat him, but it's when Madhu, the former head honcho guy, comes in with some of these other investigators with like Kankei armor piercing rounds, these guns, which sort of like changes how a lot of the weapons will develop here onwards, I guess, or at least that's what the inferring is. He causes him to flee, but there isn't really much resistance. Like, there's a little conversations here and there that something's not quite right here. Head honcho, well, new head honcho guy, ghoul, cousin, whatever, is guessing where the clowns are going to be striking. And he talks about Formation A and Formation B, but he, like, drops in Formation C, and an investigator picks up on that, but doesn't challenge him on that. He talks about like A and B splintering off and then the C group happens. That's a little frustrating, you know, just from like, come on, say something. Yeah, you can see that something's not right here. Act upon it. Stop being such a fucking slave to the system. Like, have a backbone. Stand up for yourselves. But again, fitting very in line with the rest of the writing of Tokyo Ghoul Re, when every fucking investigator is presented as being in it for themselves, but wanting to work up the ranks to be as strong and respected and have the most power and influence. Of course, a lot of them are going to stay fucking quiet, but the ones who point it out and presented as being a bit better than that, it's just, for fuck's sake, say something. But alongside the CCG stuff, the remnants of Arogi Tree and what basically any fucking ghoul that's mentioned in any of Tokyo Ghoul survives in one way or another, and they form together this essentially super group. The Kaneki is now in charge of, he calls the Goat, and he's wanting to strive for like peace between humans and ghouls, and he is going to lead the charge, and he's going to be doing this by taking on violence head on, which, you know, mirrors with what I was saying a little bit, but his angle comes at a little bit wrong, because it's in that like weird dreamscape thing where he's talking to that part of him that's Rise, who has a different art style in this, ever so slightly, just to show that she's matured a little bit, even though we don't actually see Rise as we know her from what we saw in Tokyo Ghoul, but again, it's all in a subconscious sort of thing. That Rise is actually part of this family, and she ran away, and the head of the CCG wants to marry her, have lots of babies, and like rebuild the bloodline and the image of things in his own name. He just sort of wants to take over with ghouls, I guess. Like, it's a very cookie cutter sort of thing. Annoyingly. I think there could have been a bit more with that. Like, his methods of achieving his goal is really interesting, but at the end of the day, he just wants to take over, and I think that's just a bit fucking boring. But the reveal that Rise is actually part of this family, she ran away, was interesting, but as I'm saying this and thinking about it and just saying the whole cookie cutter mold thing, feels a bit of a waste. Like, it kind of makes sense, you know, for how powerful she is, and then how powerful the Kaneki comes, and all the other fucking half-ghouls that comes from this experiment. It makes sense. I just wish there was a bit more that just happened with that, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it. Like, it was a bit of a wet fart of things, I guess. See, one of the joys of doing things ad-lib like this is that emotions can come from, like, very sudden places. But going back to, like, this super group, it's very interesting seeing all these ghouls come together, plus all the ghouls that Kaneki released from Cochlea, which has got me excited. Like, I thought, oh shit, there's going to be a real big fucking fight at the end of it. Like, it's all the most dangerous ghouls in Tokyo. Whatever's left of Aogi Tree, which is Toka's brother, the rabbit, the black owl, like, he is seemingly fucking chill about everything now. He seems to have calmed down quite a lot, but he's quite happy working with his sister now and Kaneki because of the whole fucking ghoul supremacy sort of thing. But he's chilled the fuck out, which I like. He sort of takes a bit of a back burner in this story. I did hope there would be a bit more of a development here. It's something that I've noticed a lot with this, now I'm thinking about it, that a lot of the ghouls don't have too much of a development, and it would have been nice to see a lot of them, like, step up a little bit more. And Jason's brother feels a bit more of a fleshed out character here. Like, again, dealing with his trauma of his brother being killed off through Kaneki, although it wasn't Kaneki. Not that they know that, it was actually Juzo. Actually, he would know that, surely. Kaneki would know that he didn't kill Kaneki. It would have been Juzo who would have finished him off at some point. Little continuity error, I guess, unless I missed something. But Kaneki doesn't share that anything, but he chills out, and him not being able to speak and read properly, like using, say, like getting some wrong words in the wrong places or whatever, is put into a bit more context because Toka's brother goes deep underground on the 24th ward, which is where all these ghouls end up hiding, which happens shortly after the genocidal leader is like wiping out ghouls. Like 80%, 90% of ghouls are gone, and deep underground, like, you've got these ghouls who don't speak English, well, Japanese, I guess. Again, reading English translation, they don't speak Japanese. They have a very clear ghoul dialect, but they don't call themselves ghouls, they call themselves human, which is interesting. And they have this whole myth about this dragon that, like, toppled under this top of the city, and they're waiting for the dragon to return, sort of thing, which does pay off a little bit. But it's very interesting just to see the culture of ghouls like this. I just thought that was really interesting. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that, just because I just really fond of the fucking world building, the setting of the characters, and just they don't play too much of a role in this other than to reveal some of the plot. And also it is actually Iota at the end who, like, has to take Kaneki down for plot reasons to remove the whole fucking embryo sac and then kill off other version of Risei. So it's nice to see that the two of them are working together. But I just want to see more. I just want to see more of the Tokyo Ghoul world. And I am aware that there are, like, some spin-off novels, or there might be manga, I'm not entirely too sure, that I might have to get my hands on and read. So if that's something of interest to you, do let me know down in the comments below. I mean, Holly's pretty eager to start reading it right now. And it's with these bits of the ghouls, at first, like, this, like, overground, like, abandoned place. We don't know where it is, but it's abandoned. That's where they're all hiding before they all were moved underground. That we have, like, the conversations with Mado and Amon, because it's actually this group of ghouls that have taken her in, because it's what Kaneki would have wanted. But of course, Mado feels betrayed by Kaneki because of everything that's going on. She's feels betrayed by Amon because he just fucked off for a few years and, like, didn't fucking speak to her. But there's a real touching and almost frightening, but yet sadly understandable exchange between her and Tuka. Because, just as a little side distraction, Tuka is also very happy that Kaneki's got his memories back. Those two are very much together now at this point. But the bit I'm talking about is, like, Tako and Mado go on a bit of a walk, because Mado feels a bit better, just up and about, moving about. And Tako just wanting to show her, you know, that not all ghouls are bad. And, like, just shows of all these kids playing about. They reveal to each other as, like, Tuka's the one that killed her father. Mado's father was the one that killed Himone's parents, and Himone and Mado actually exchanged this really touching hug at the end. And she doesn't hate Mado for it, and Mado doesn't really hate her as much. And she feels very confused and conflicted because, you know, she's seen that these ghouls can be nice. She can see all these kids, you know. She feels confused that nobody hates her for the things that she's done. And she says, who do I have left to hate? Or who do I hate? Because she's seen the corruption of the CCG at this point. She's seen the kindful nature of ghouls. Like, her entire life has been working towards committing a genocide. You know, just fighting and protecting people. And she was there to protect and fight against her father. And the ghouls, whatever, who killed her father don't hate her. There isn't any animosity there, and she's just feeling so confused. And whilst the line of who do I hate is fucking frightening, just showing that it's a huge conflict of character. But I feel for her, because as I said, like, that's the life that she has known. Like, what do I do now? I protected a ghoul I shouldn't have done, but, you know, it's just, again, motions, messy fucking things, and it all just comes to the fact that all these different elements, they're just people with feelings, they're sentient, they know things, they just want to fucking survive, and it just works best when we just all come together. That lovey-dovey hippie crap, as some people might put it. You know, it's more heart-wrenching than it is frightening, honestly, because you kind of get where she's coming from. And as I said, Tuka and Kaneki tie the knot. They actually have a marriage. The gourmet ghoul, he calms the fuck down. He doesn't so much want to eat Kaneki now, but he feels very loyal to him all the same. And there's a little bit here and there, but there's definitely a shift in his character. He organises big old wedding. It has a bit more of a tribal feel to it, so it's distinctly different from what humans do, which I like the fact that there is a clear, distinct difference with all of that. And it is nice that the two of them do hook up, because it's teased all the way fucking through this. But it's really through Ri where it like kicks off properly, where Tuka's a lot more honest with herself, and you could argue that some of her resentment towards Kaneki to begin with was because of her feelings towards him, the kindness that she's just wanting to look out and protect him sort of thing. But it does like move at a rapid pace here, partly because they feel they're all going to die. I don't actually think the two of them ever say that they love each other. I think they might do once, but it's through their actions and their words that really show their love to each other. I mean, the marriage are one thing. Tuka is talking to Kaneki about, you know, whether he's a virgin or not, so clearly she wants to fucking get it on with him, but that kind of also implies that she doesn't have the best amount of experience herself, that she wants to but may not feel confident in leading. And they do have sex, and there is a sex scene in this manga. And while she initiated, because they're talking about and about to go in this big old battle or whatever, and she like just takes control of him, just like spins him over and pins him down, and like, we're doing this sort of thing. She lets him leave, and there's some shots where it's implied that this is her first time too, because it's a little painful for women or femme-presenting people, or people who have vaginas or whatever, because it's super tight, and there might be a bit of blood, etc. and so forth, and it seems a bit more uncomfortable, but they do clearly want it. They do want to try and make it work, and Kaneki's not exactly confident either, because when he's asked, is he a virgin, like, he's making coffee and he just ends up pouring up the floor in a real fucking comedic way, because it's just so out of blue for him. And then when they're actually getting it on, he gets a little taken aback by seeing her tits in her bra, and like goes to squeeze them. Oh, they're so soft, and he takes her bra off, and like she's straddled on top of him, like chest shot upwards. No nipples. That's just unnecessarily censored, I think, here. Because it's just fucking naked. Might as well just draw the fucking nipples in, like hashtag free the nipple. It's a weird choice. I get it, but I've never got that level of censorship. Like, put nipples on tits, it's abhorrent, but nipples on guys, it's fine, because that like half naked shot of Kaneki in my original review of Tokyo Ghoul and other chest shots of him here, he's got nipples. That's alright there, but hey fucking ho, that's just the way of the world, unfortunately. And they're awkwardly trying to work it out, but they do want each other, they do clearly love each other, and it's just a really beautiful scene to see. And that might seem a little weird to some of you, like putting such a strong emotion for just some animated sex, and some people might think I'm a bit of a pervert with this, particularly with the fact it's Japan and the whole hentai scene and whatnot, and also just the whole conversation regarding like sex scenes as a whole. The whole industries out there that just thrive on being nothing but sex, or having as minimal plot, or the plot is just so fucking ludicrous and basic, but they need something to instigate the sex in porn or whatever. And people argue that sex scenes in films and books and whatever aren't necessary, that they're just there to gain views, money, clicks, whatever. And I suppose there is an element of that works, because, you know, sex does sell. It's like one of the most fucking common tricks in marketing. And there are instances where I feel that there's sex in scenes that just, it's just there for the sake of it. I cannot remember the life of me the name of it now, but I was half watching a series with my mother, i.e. I was aware that it was on and my mother was watching it in the background, to do with these Irish mafia gangsters. I want to say it was in Boston or something, like a 10-year-old series at this point. The premise is that you got like one family, well, obviously mafia family, and one brother's really thick into it, and another one is like this Senate state representative. If you know what I'm talking about, do let me know in the comments below, and I'm honestly quite just too fucking lazy to search it up. And like in the latter series, there's some sex scenes in there, But there's some scenes later on where it just, like, every other scene, it was just sex and there was tits and dicks about, and it just felt a bit, okay, let's see how much we can get away with, sort of thing. And yeah, you could argue it's to do, like, the display of power, I guess, of men over women, and just, like, not really caring and what, those sort of things. And the Netflix series, oh, I believe it's a Netflix anyway, it's on Netflix at the least, called Power, had moments of that in there for sure. It's just like, okay, like, who is this for? Like, just do a fucking porno for fuck's sake. But there are moments, such as with here in Tokyo Ghoul, where it felt necessary because it shows a development of character. It shows trust and feelings for each other. And as I started to say, they're both virgins. They're both trying to work things out and understand things. And I can talk very fondly, but I won't, of, like, seeing a pair of tits in the flesh for the first time, which, without going into too much details, it was with, well, not my partner anymore. We split up fairly, yesterday, as of the recording of this, and our relationship was very untypical. It was a long-distance relationship. We met up and we hooked up online, and we met up like a few months later, stayed at a hotel, and just, whereas traditionally things would move at a steady pace, like, all the things happened all at once. And I remember seeing it, just thinking really nervous, you know, because all these things are going to be happening shortly, and it's just, there was no gradual build-up. And it's that sort of thing that happens here. Like, Kaneki hasn't done any of this shit before, and he's now about to go into a fight where he could fucking die, technically again, and just, you know, after just having sex, and he gets Tuka pregnant, so now he's not only fighting for ghouls and Tuka, but she's now pregnant, which is actually another thing that sets Turo off down the fucking down path towards the end when they have that big fight. Tuka refers to Kaneki as a husband, and Turo, fucking loses it. But I've talked a bit about that already, and it's just really beautiful to see, and it feels natural. It doesn't feel pornographic. You don't really see much other than censored titty, but it was very relatable. And at that point when I was reading it, when I was in a relationship, it just sort of made me realise just how much I had just longed and missed touch and being intimate. Not necessarily sex, although sex is great, but those very human emotions of being near and with somebody that you love and care for and trust. And it's very clear that these two do care and love each other. And there's a bit before then when he's keeping Tuka a distance still because he doesn't want anything bad to happen to her. And, like, she insists on being with him, you know, that we're feeling things for each other. I want to be with you. Please trust me. It's a lot more wholesome than that, and that does happen. And he's, like, allowing her to help him, and it's just really cool to see. And I just think that was a highlight for sure when that all happened. So the plot develops a lot more when there's a group of ghouls with Kenki that go out and find, like, meat and things for the rest of the 24th Ward ghouls to feed upon, with all this different stuff with Clown and the CCG going on. The leader escapes through a fucking window, survives because of course he does, because plot armor and what have you. But this is a trap. Well, part of the plan's been missing because he escapes all this and he goes with these all kid ghouls to invade the 24th Ward, and they find them because the group takes in a ghoul kid who they then realise is in actual fact one of the half-ghoul spies, because somebody catches him. Oh, it's the gourmet. He catches him, like, trying to put, like, a disk drive in a USB stick into, like, the computer. Imprisons him, like, demands to see Kaneki. He's a bit fucking cray. But this was all a distraction, because he's got, like, a tracker embedded in his fucking tongue, which is used to bring the fucking CCG to them. And literally the best of the fucking best are down there to completely wipe these ghouls out. The leader and all these other half-ghoul kids. Juzo's group, and Juzo is down there, who I haven't talked a lot here, because Juzo doesn't really appear all that much, other than the fact that he knows that their leader lied about Kaneki's execution, which is how the kids were introduced, weirdly enough. But Juzo doesn't retaliate or do anything about this either, which is interesting and disappointing. One thing I forgot to mention is that when Yuri and the other half-ghoul investigators rebel, you have the big tittied sleepy one. Sorry for the descriptor, but I do not remember her name. She's got the fucking longest name out of anybody there. It's like Hebrew Yisha or something like that. She actually says, I'm gonna fight with you. I don't want to be a fucking terrorist. Like, I don't know how fucking more political you can get with that, but the CCG are fucking terrorists all the way through this. And especially at this point, there's no fucking denying that that's what they're doing. You could argue that prior to that, they were just sort of keeping the peace and just like hunting down the most extreme ones, so there was some semblance of balance there, and just people, you know, abusing their power. And also, again, they're still you know, committing genocide. So I'm not trying to give them too much excuses, but I've already talked about the fine balance between and the emotional turmoil from both sides, and both sides being empathetic. But it's just really pleasant to see that somebody is just calling them a fucking terrorists. So you have Zuzo Squad, the leader, and all these half-Gorgons coming down there to basically wipe out the whole fucking lot. A lot of them can fight, but most of them can't, and then they try and flee, and some are killed off. We obviously don't see that, but it's very fucking clear that that's what's happening. And Kaneki realizes on this scavenger hunt, essentially, what's going on, as he just started talking things from thinking himself. And in classic Kaneki fashion, he goes back by himself thinking he can save everybody, and he does a fine job like wiping up investigators and whatnot. And he bulks up again with a similar but another form. He has so many fucking forms in this manga, it's difficult to keep track of his power level. And he's about to take on Zuzo and his assistant, and those two like bulk up in like this sort of like full armor Kenkis that we've seen beforehand, and they're only given to the best of the best. And Zuzo, as I've mentioned, is being set up to being like the replacement to Ariyama, because they excelled to the pace that Ariyama did. They're undefeated, etc. and so forth. And there's this one panel here that shows that these two like in their full suits. Another one, Kaneki said, I've got everyone to prepare for, etc. and so forth. You turn the page, and then you see Kaneki as this nugget, essentially. He's been defeated. No arms, no legs, he's on death's door. And I was like, I was so fucking shocked by this. This is one of those moments, like one of those page-turner moments where, what the fuck? And I was like, that can't be right. I was flicking through the pages to see if I missed the page numbers, if pages were missing, and I was physically counting the pages at one point. It's like, holy shit, you are not going to show this fight? That Shuzo and this dude completely decimates them. Like, even the fight with Ariyama didn't reduce Kaneki to such a state. Like, okay, he had his eyes fucking gouged out, which is bad and all, he was kidnapped, but holy fuck. That powerful fucking shit. And then you turn through the pages and like the leader's mocking him, it's like, you've lost. And it really felt like a fucking video game, like, you got the bad ending. There's even a page where you turn over and it says, game over. Kaneki can't fucking realise it. It's like, he lost, what happened sort of thing. He's all losing himself. He has another one of these conversations within himself, with all his different fucking personalities. The kid that's traumatised, human Kaneki, but still ignoring that he's a ghoul, investigator Kaneki, colder Kaneki, the mad fucking Kaneki, who his other forms don't refer to by his name, like Prisoner 2401, like 241 or whatever. Sorry, Prisoner 240. Numbers are hard. You're rambling, your opinion doesn't matter, which is so fucking cold. And then of course there's the mad one who like was tortured in the chair. They're all talking to each other, and he realizes that again he's still trying to protect one. He's still being an idiot, running back and protecting himself. And I'm going to talk more about that other like mind palace thing, for lack of a better phrase, with Risei. Because they're sort of connected, because that comes up in conversation, and he realizes that he wasn't doing it to protect everyone, that he was doing it because he wanted to be acknowledged, like to be seen, to be appreciated, which kind of makes him feel a bit dictatorish. And he kind of acknowledges that, like this version of Risei has talked to him, that makes you sound like a dictator. Like, you, even if it makes you a dictator, like, yeah, I'll do whatever's necessary. He sort of realises that he's just doing it to be acknowledged, and he's confronting his traumas, and that's literally the only fucking way he's able to defeat the dude, because he finally fucking realises that he's not perfect, and all the stuff of him like calling himself a coward and like protecting him, it was all a lie, it was all self-servicing. But he does ultimately want peace between ghouls and humans, and it's just, again, really understandable, because didn't feel that his mum loved him properly. His aunt certainly didn't. When he was at that phase when he was ignoring his ghoul side, he didn't feel appreciated. He wasn't really appreciated in the investigators. Like, at no point in his fucking life has he felt appreciated other than with his friend Hideo, whose face he fucking ate off and died. Only he didn't. He survived. He only got his lower jaw eaten off. And when that was revealed, on my page of notes here, I have literally wrote in capital letters, Hide is alive, and then just filled the rest of that line out with question marks. Like, fuck. And he sort of helps with some of the plan investigation stuff. And it's just, yeah, wow. Kind of makes a lot of what Kaneki went through pointless, I guess, because you think that he'd lost it and ate his best friend, and he's dealing with the trauma of that. Did kind of eat his face, so that is all traumatic all the same, but it kind of undermines a little bit of that character growth, but at the same time, it's nice, you know, that they're able to, like, reconcile, and Hede just doesn't have any fucking bad feelings, and it also makes sense that he sacrificed a bit of himself so that he was able to face Ariyama, which obviously didn't go the way that they intended it to, but it's all part of the plot after all. So you might be thinking at this point, well, how the fuck does little nugget Kaneki get out of this? Does he die and everyone's got to pick up the pieces for him? Well, no, I've already alluded there's like some weird fucking embryo thing that happens. Because what Kaneki does is that he's going to keep moving forward like a centipede. And then he starts eating the kids. And I think he bites like the lead investigator person as well, but he's basically just munching down all these fucking different kids. Like, the leader sends all the investigators off to do the rest of their shit, leaving him all these different kids, which is all part of their plan because they're all ghouls, and he's eating all these different kids. He gains his power back, he takes out all these different kids, and he's eating more ghouls than any other ghoul has eaten, which then develops into the last stretch of the manga, which honestly felt so fucking JRPG at this point, or it's just fucking whack. Which is where the horror becomes a bit more eldritch in the sense, because this is the same volume where Hide is revealed to being alive, and again, the only notes I wrote for this was, Hide is alive, and what the fuck? Because it begins off with this very normal scene, like people living out their lives, there's this big old building, people going about their business. I thought, okay, why are we seeing this? It's like, it's just like a weird time jump. You see like this 2-page shot of these people in this windows doing something, you turn the page, and then you get this shot. Now, I've seen this image before, but I didn't realise it was Tokyo Ghoul, and I thought, what the fuck? Hence my notes of, what the fuck? That is Kaneki, who then becomes the aforementioned dragon, awaking from a slumber, who looks more like a fucking kaiju centipede. Literally, this gargantuan thing just storming through Tokyo and just crushing people, killing lives, and just like these little bits of him all over the place that start spawning these really horrible monsters that in the epilogue still persist even though so many years have passed. Like, obviously they managed to destroy it, but the rate it's able to decay is going to take years. I think, like, the scientist woman actually says it's going to take centuries for all of this to break down properly. Which is so fucking bonkers to think about, that now this is the new common enemy threat sort of thing. But this is all being part of this plot thing that the leader is wanting to turn more people into ghouls. Because this kaiju centipede, which is what I'm just going to call it, or the dragon, I guess, would be easier, is giving off these pheromones that is turning people into ghouls, and they're having to force to be eaten upon flesh. Like, I don't really know what the end game is, like, what was the intention of all of this, but the leader has realised that they have fucked up, and they fucking flee underground to find, like, the main body of this kaiju, to find this version of Risei, take away, and then become, what, the new king and queen, I guess, of this new empire. I don't really know what the end goal was, but he realises he's fucked up, and he just, like, fucks off and flees, and he's a bit too much out of control. And it's really Kaneki that's the only one that goes down there, because it's literally making everyone feel nauseous. With the ghouls, it causes one of the characters who are fighting on top of the kaiju to find Kenji, because they realise they need to get Kenji out of this, because they're not really one of the same. And they realise, well, Toku realises that she gave him the ring I think her parents had, and she realised, okay, we could use a metal detector to try and locate where the body is, and then pull him out. Really fucking simple idea. Turns out it works, fortunately. But it's a real simple thing, and there's this big old fight with the investigators and Tuco that I've talked about already. And it causes one of the ghouls, the half ghouls rather, to produce like a fucking thing from her face. We see an element of this before in the first issue of Tokyo Ghoul because it seemed a bit familiar. I didn't mention it then because it didn't seem all that important other than just being like a weird side plot thing. So Kaneki's freed again. He looks all fucking different. He has another fucking form when he has the fight with the leader guy who again completely fucking thrashes and again confronts his trauma via Risei. It's also through this that we see the fight with the clowns and Amon, or the leader, and we also see a bit of resolution between Yomo and the mask making ghoul, because he's part of the clan. He's a villain in this, which I feel bad about because I actually really like the character, but it's kind of hinted a bit that he's all in it for the chaos and things. But so I like that. I just wish he wasn't a bad guy just because I liked him, and it just felt bad. I thought these two characters are going to go and kill each other. They do fight each other because Yomo is like wanting to protect Toko because it's revealed that he is Toko's and Ayoto's uncle, which I think I've mentioned previously, but if I haven't, I mention it now. That's kind of a big reveal. I don't think the two siblings know that he's the uncle. He's just notably older. He's a bit of a violent one, and he meets the mask making ghoul as a friend. But it's kind of sad that these two are fighting each other, like these basically brothers going at it, sort of thing. The best buddies, like real bro energy that these two have. Yomu's the one that wins, but he doesn't kill him. He doesn't kill his mate. And there's a bit of a homage to a thing that they do as their kids. Like he helps him after having to carry through because he's really injured. But the thing that's really interesting about Yamu is that we don't actually see him turn or use his Keneki, not Keneki, sorry, like his old like ghoul powers at all. Except here, where he just throws a bolt of fucking lightning at the guy and impales him through like this tower spire, sort of like an antenna sort of thing. So Yomo's pretty fucking powerful. We see some of the extent of his power. We don't see any of the other fucking ghouls fire energy at them, right? We see it with Ariyama with his Quinke, like he's able to fire like these energy, like this like pronged weapon sort of thing, just to show that again how powerful he is. We don't see it from ghouls. So obviously there are ghouls out there who are able to do this sort of thing, but we see it with Yomo, which is frightening to think about. But he still has that humanity and compassion. Like, this isn't you. I'm not going to kill you. Like, cut out of it sort of thing, which is rather wholesome. And he's still with the clowns, or rather he's still with his little circle of friends who associate with the clowns, are the sort of antagonistic adjacent sort of thing. But it's nice that not all the resolutions are left with death. It's a little comforting, and just seeing some fucking compassion at play. And regarding returning ghoul characters, we also see the leaders of the Black Dobermans, or Dobers I think they're called, and the apes return. You know, that woman and guy from the cafe that we saw very briefly at the end of the manga. The leaders of these two large groups that, you know, are this big threat for the CCG for some time. Believed to have been wiped out. I thought the two of those two were dead, or I think they survived. I don't quite remember, but I wasn't expecting to see them again. They return ever so briefly, wanting to work with Kaneki, but they get kidnapped by the CCG. And then these elite CCG, you know, the top hat, the V, the 5 or whatever, capture them, and they use them as Quinkes, essentially brainwashing them, which the CCG make note of. I can't remember the name that's given here, but it's like it was trialed in Germany or whatever. Germany's mentioned quite a lot in this fucking manga. And it was just deemed too unethical, too dangerous, whatever. But it was basically, this is a bad thing, and they're doing it here, having ghouls fight ghouls in such a fashion, and it's real messed up. I mean, fortunately, the two leaders survive, and they have their memories intact and everything, which is varying levels of impressive. But it just goes to show that, and also with the bit with Yomo and Ren, that's the mask maker's name, that despite how late these are, like I believe that the Dobermans, yes, and I think that fight with Ren and Yomo there happened in the last issue of the manga. How they're willing to develop and introduce new ideas so early on, or that thing with Yomo, fucking powerful ghoul we have yet to see. Not like fucking kaiju level, sure, but probably definitely up there because we don't see any other fucking ghoul like fire energy beams at all, and also this element with the CCG, like other little quinkes and things that they use, and it just makes you question just what other methods do they have at their disposal that we just don't get to see or hear about. What boundaries of ethics do they want to cross? I mean, for fuck's sake, we have half ghoul investigators in the plenty by the end of it. I mean, most of the humans it happens to with consent. One of them does become a ghoul. But do you reckon those kids were? But do you reckon those kids had consent? Or whether they just grown in a fucking test tube sort of thing? Like, yeah, it's rocking real messed up shit. But of course, you know, the ghouls save the day. The leader is killed off by Kaneki. Kaneki is able to kill, like, the embryonic version of Risei. The fifth are defeated. Everybody's plot lines and hooks are just correlated in a nice little bow. Zuzo, as I was correct, becomes the Ariyama because the CCG forms like this Tokyo industry thing. I can't remember the name they give it, where you have ghouls working there. The gourmet ghoul, he's putting a lot of his finances into this and like combining his little company, like royal family, whatever, the Rosewoods, into this. You have the ghoul hunters who are still doing it. The group's not together. Like, Tora goes off to do something, but he's still hunting ghouls. I don't remember exactly what everyone's doing. Like, as I said, this has got a huge fucking cast, and I do not remember every single fucking person. Juzo, as I started to say, has become the Aramana. They're considered like the best of the fucking bunch, like top fucking rank, so watch out, world. But Zuzo also gets the happy ever after because their father figure, who was the instructor for Amon, wakes up from his fucking coma, which might seem a bit idealistic, but it's nice that they get their happiness and they just like drop. Then they find out the news, they just drop to their knees and they just fucking cry because you don't see them be that open with their emotions. They're clearly fucking damaged goods. Like, they've gone through some fucking shit, and this one guy is like the only person who has treated Shuzo like a fucking human being with emotions and feelings. It's just so hot. I love Zuzo. I love these characters, but it's just so great that Zuzo gets his happily ever after. If I wanted anyone to have to feel happy and at peace, it was fucking Zuzo. Like, they fucking deserve it, even though they're like a twisted motherfucker who has a fucking rise out of killing people. It's understandable because the fucking shit that Zuzo's gone through, from being raised from one group of murderers to being raised by another group of fucking murderers and just being treated like a source of entertainment and a tool. Zuzo is a bit better off with the CG. I talked about all of this before in the backstory and stuff, but it's great to see that everybody has their happily ever after, that there's more equality between ghouls and humans, because I fucking forgot to mention the whole fucking kaiju thing. Like, it's Hidie and somebody else that managed to convince the CCG that the ghouls should be working together with the fucking CCG. It's literally the only way that they can help out with this. Not through violence, but through strong motivational pieces. There's been lots of violence, there's been a lot of violence that's got to that point, but they had that fucking conversation. Bit of turmoil with the half ghoul stuff on the fucking kaiju, I guess, but there is peace. The ghouls are working with humans now and the investigators. They put aside their differences. They go and hunt down the ghouls that are still fucking about. They're hunting down these monsters that are popping out of this dragon kaiju thing. And Kaneki and Tuka have their child, who has their little profile at the end of this, because something I haven't mentioned that's similar with the Tokyo Ghoul, they all have their like profile bios, but rather than being at the front of the manga, but to the back. Also, there aren't any, or as many spoilers. And their child is mentioned at the end of volume 16. They are a half ghoul and they can eat normal food. Which hit me a lot harder than I thought it was, because it's such a strong part of the story, both from Kaneki and Tuka. Like, their different paths, as I talked about in my original review. Hello, Future Lore here. I'm very tired, as you might have picked up from the fucking video that you've just watched, or in the middle of watching. I don't know where I'm going to be putting this edit, but it needs to go somewhere. But I'm using my tiredness as an excuse to say that I completely forgot to tell you what the fuck happened to Kano? You know, the fucking human scientist that caused all this fuckery. Well, he's confronted by what the half-ghoul girl, the one that remains, because remember, the one absorbed her sister, who has apparently the most beef with Kano. She's part of the whole goat thing, and she's wanting to go and, you know, take him out. They have a bit of a chat. He feels he's done what he's going to do. Mission accomplished. He blows his brains out because he's a fucking pussy. Which is super fucking frustrating that she didn't get the send-off that she wanted. But it's understanding that a fucking low-life piece of shit like him would send himself off like that. It's fitting, but so bad. I feel sad for that character as well, that she couldn't get the peace that she wanted. And I think at the end that she becomes one of the ones that that's it, she goes around the world hunting ghouls, and gains a name of herself that way around. So the quality between ghouls and humans is a worldwide thing now, or maybe it's something specific to Japan, I don't know. I think from the writing is that this whole thing in Tokyo has brought the whole world together on some semblance of unity. But yeah, fucking pussy Kano bitch right here. I didn't know anything about Tokyo Ghoul Tokyo Ghoul Re, I should say, coming into this, other than it was the sequel. Well, that's about it really, and the anime season 3 uses Tokyo Ghoul Re. And I heard like some people say that the writing for Tokyo Ghoul is really good, but it's really from Tokyo Ghoul Re it really lifts and it really becomes its own. Which I agree, like the writing is more mature, it's not as raw as Tokyo Ghoul. Like this is clearly the author like getting their emotions and like their first idea, the idea that made them great and famous and all the rest of it. But they've had some time to cook with this, and this really does become a much finer series than its predecessor, and I think in many ways it surpasses the original Tokyo Ghoul. And just the whole Tokyo Ghoul run as a whole has been one emotional roller coaster, as I've been reading this through some very unpleasant parts of my life. I mentioned the breakup from earlier on. The beginning of my Tokyo Ghoul review had a very depressing start, which I still fucking stand by as an appropriate opening for the general theme and vibe that people have with Tokyo Ghoul as a whole. That it's like this super edgy series that's like, I mean, it makes fun of itself with some of the emo stuff. Like, the author is fucking aware of it, and he like pokes and makes fun of it with like little jokey comic strips that happened in between the manga that I didn't pay too much attention to just because I wasn't too interested in it. But yeah, I fucking love Tokyo Ghoul, and I felt really empty and hollow when I finished reading it, because now, okay, what the fuck do I do with my life? Like, it sort of hit me that much. It's made me feel seen. It's similar with Tokyo Ghoul. It's made me feel seen, and it's been very appropriate and hopeful in a realistic sort of way. Like, oh, we all just come to hand together and be peaceful. Like, it's not like that. It shows that you do need to fucking be active with your change and your activism and do things, and to make a proper change in the world, there is going to be some bloodshed. There's going to be some cross words, and also applies to confronting and dealing with trauma, or basically anything that's different, which I do have to admit that is a little bit idealistic, because there are many people who for one reason or another can't do that. Like, people are going to feel trapped, who are going to be unable to do these things for one reason or another, and that's fine. But as a whole, you know, when confronting fascism, genocide and terrorism, and just trying to make the world a better place as a whole, you do need to be at the forefront of things. Like, you need to make the change happen, and dialogue isn't going to be peaceful. The art's fantastic, characters far fucking too many for me to keep a track of, rather. But they all feel human. Yeah, I kind of like peppered my thoughts and opinions about this all the way through this, so this isn't really as a more contained summary as I would typically do. I'm so glad that I've spent so much money on this and just reading this, and I kind of wish I didn't binge it as quickly as I did, but I kind of say that with a lot of these things, but I just really enjoyed it, and I just couldn't fucking put the shit down. I absolutely love this series, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's not too long if I just go through it all again, just because I just loved it so much. Which I don't typically do with books. But I feel this could be like a really... I think I found a new comfort read. A bit of comfort media. So before I get too fucking emotional and trauma dump you even more, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about Tokyo Ghoul Re and Tokyo Ghoul as a whole. What do you think about it? Good? Bad? Different? Let's start a Tokyo Ghoul related conversation down in the comments below. Also, I'd be more than happy to take on manga recommendations as well. The other Tokyo Ghoul books that I mentioned, what are they like? I'm aware there's a live action film, which I haven't seen. My impression, it's not very good. Is there anything like Tokyo Ghoul that I would read? Be cautious with vampires, only because if I might have seen it already. I kind of like the Tokyo Ghoul being vampire adjacent, but if there's anything that's like Tokyo Ghoul that isn't clearly vampire, anyway, just give me your fucking recommendations. Like, ignore my waffling here. Like, I'd love to hear what you think I would enjoy and potentially read and check out on the channel. I do have a couple of things that are a little different to what I would typically cover, just because I just want to read them and give my thoughts about them. To give an idea, Metamorphosis. Google that one, you'll recognise that one specific image that's used in so many fucking thumbnails. Yeah, give me your thoughts and opinions about Tokyo Ghoul and the different manga that I should check out and other works of fiction and comics and all the rest of it. And yeah, I'll see you on the next upload, whatever that may well be for you. Until next time, farewell.